Namaste.
2017. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Sobroff, McLean Hill, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum. Number 1 on the agenda, election of officers. This item has been continued. Number 2 on the agenda, consent agenda items. We have a comment card on A, C, D, and F.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve items 2B, D, E, G, H, I, J, K, L, and M?
We have a card on D, sir.
What? Sorry?
We have a card on D.
Okay, so B, E, G, H, I, J, K, L, and M. We have a motion.
So moved with thanks to each of the
Second.
donors.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. So call the comment card for items 2A, C, D, and F. It's all Mr. Herman, correct?
It's all Mr. Herman. Mr.
Mr. Herman,
Herman.
we'll take your comments on items 2A, C, D, and F now, please.
Item 2A, donation valued at $22,703.
2A? 2A. Here we go. Regarding walls and installation of doors, the mounted foundation will be replacing the walls and doors, apparently and obviously, right? However, regarding the center and how to replace the walls and doors remains a question of possibility, right? After all, we do not know whether or not we're using actual recycled doors. Because I know in the past, the city, in order to save money in its time of hardship, due to the liberties of these legalities and liability, we find out that many times they use poor devices, inadequate products. So, you know, the same goes about police guns. They go off automatically by a trigger being loose. Pow, pow, pow. But in this particular case regarding the $22,000, I'm sure it's not going to happen, because relative to the donation of the barn walls and doors, not only will the barn doors secure the horses, let alone maybe protect a service dog like our police canines. In case there's a fire, we can close the doors and keep the horses and dogs safe. So I'm in favor of the Amundsen Acquisition Center. And hopefully Mr. Sobroff would help educate us on the license and permit process for barning the animals in this area to ensure that their safety is dedicated by a dog license as well. Roof, roof.
And Mr. Herman on 2C.
I'll move item 2A. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now,
Okay.
Mr. Herman, item 2C.
And now that we have a recreational activities for $1,600 regarding the Philharmonic Association, well, I find it as a potential conflict of interest, just as I brought out regarding Mr. Bustamante, although for the record, he's not in his seat. We do have a new Inspector General, for the record. But when it comes to donations from outside private donators, we must have a audit, because it's apparent that most of this money is getting whitewashed into these programs, and it's padding the pockets of particular persons, but I'm not going to bring up by name, Mr. Sobroff. However, the activities and events would benefit Hollywood because it deals with area cadets. Now, with the program of the cadets, on the skim of things, on the balance of objection, the issue at Hollywood Area Cadets for that 1,600 donation for food, it should be doubled. It should come out of all the philanthropists who like to donate big lumps of sums of money, especially when you're a developer and you're worth $1 billion. You can double that up so the kids can enjoy the event. They can eat as much as they want and enjoy, rather than be suppressed by the actions taken on today's news, everyone, regarding cadets. It's the most current event on the news, reaching out to Hollywood, that we must stop these programs for disrupting the lives psychologically to children.
Do I have a motion to approve item 2C?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Herman, item 2F, please. I'm sorry, 2D.
2S?
D.
Now, regarding September 8, monetary donations, once again, from the Los Angeles Philharmonic. If you put items C and D together, it's quite a bit of chump change, but it's not enough. Food and recreational activities should always be doubled, because children who live in poverty, who sign up for programs under the false name of cadet program set forth, should understand whether or not these events benefit them. I know it benefited one of your officers, but now he's in jail. But it doesn't benefit the community without transparency and openness to the issue pertaining to cadets. Children. Let me clearly put it. Children. And so with this additional $800, as I said, regarding an audit of how this money is spent, how this money is delegated for what you're purchasing, it should be itemized and placed before the public before accepting the donations. Because I'm not sure whether or not Mr. Sobroff friends are padding enough money for the cadets. And so with the remaining balance of my time, I'm waving those 44 seconds back. Thank you. Y'all.
Thank you. I will move item 2D. Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Herman, you have a comment on item 2F.
Maybe I failed to remind you that, once again, now here's an additional $400 for the Los Angeles Philharmonic Association. Food and recreational activities and events. Why couldn't you just bunch this together and itemize it on one item as opposed to separating it and creating this 2-page of benefits? But let me go back regarding area cadets. Now, this is in the Southwest area. Activities regarding cadets has been an issue on the news, and that issue involves children. Children who can be easily coerced into doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And it's not hypothetical to think about it, but it's psychological. That you're damaging and ruining these children who are soon to be adults and will one day participate in an activity that's inappropriate, which is molesting kids. Kids fucking kids. I don't get it. That's why I signed up on item F, to remind me how fucked up the institution is. And I'm sorry to use such intensifiers to amplify my point, but I'm sure the majority of people here are tired of hearing about the sorry program of the cadets. Stop it immediately. Stop it now. The same way we asked for the drones to be stopped, so that we're not watched, but rather the police are watched from abusing children who are called cadets in your cadet program. I emphasize this because even Mr. Teamfank will agree with me as he turns red on the subject, that it's embarrassing and an embarrassment to our society and the social well-being of every human being that we have to go through this, minorities and people who are racial profiled, to hear the sorry bad news. Thank you.
I will move item 2F. Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Before we go to the regular agenda items, I want to make two announcements regarding upcoming police commission meetings. Our meeting this coming Tuesday, as a reminder, Tuesday, September 19th, we are holding it at the Edwin Markham Middle School Auditorium. That address is 1650 East 104th Street. This is a part of our effort, and that meeting will be held from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. This is a part of our effort to have a number of meetings held in the different geographic bureaus, in communities, at times that are hopefully more convenient for a broader cross-section of the community to come and to attend and have their voices heard. The following week, on September 26, 2017, we will be holding that meeting across the street at the Edward Roybal Board of Works Public Works. That's room 350. And we're going to start that meeting at 9 a.m. We're going to start it a half an hour earlier to make sure that we have enough time to go through our very lengthy agenda, because unfortunately, unlike this room, we have a hard out, I think, at what time, Mr. Tifank? 1 o'clock? Yes, sir. We have to be out of that room by 1 o'clock, so we're starting a half hour earlier in the hopes that that will give us plenty of time to get through the entire agenda. So again, next week's meeting is 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening at the Edwin Markham Middle School, and the following week will be across the street at the Board of Public Works room at 9 a.m. The meeting this coming Tuesday is a community meeting. The meeting the following week is a regular meeting.
That's the same show and tell stuff.
Okay, thank you, sir. We're now on item number 3, regular agenda items. We have cards on 3A and 3E.
Okay, I'm going to skip around here a little bit. On item 3D, do any of my fellow commissioners, would they like to hear the report or have any comments on the report? It was a very clean report. Okay, then I will move item 3D. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And then we'll go to item 3B. I would just like to have that report read out loud, and then we'll go back to 3A and just continue through there. So item 3B, if we could just have that report read out loud by anyone.
Thank you. This is a 3B Department's report dated August 30th, 2017, relative to the recommendation to award the Medal of Valor for Bravery to Officer John Carlisle, serial number 36156, Southwest Area, and Officer Garrett Brooks, serial number 41986, Southwest Area.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner President and fellow commissioners.
Can you move the microphone a little bit closer and make sure that it's on? Okay.
Testing 1, 2.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioner President and fellow commissioners. I'm Captain Lee Sands, and today I'm here to recommend that the Honorable Board of Police Commissioners award the Medal of Valor to Officers John Carlisle and Garrett Brooks for their heroic actions on March 28, 2016. On Monday, March 28th, Officer John Carlisle and Garrett Brooks were assigned to Southwest Division Uniform Patrol, Unit 3 Adam 18, in a clearly marked police vehicle. As Officers Carlisle and Brooks began their watch, they noticed a plume of smoke coming from the intersection of Martin Luther King Boulevard and Western Avenue. Officer Carlisle drove them immediately to the intersection to investigate. Upon arriving, they both noticed that a multi-vehicle collision had taken place. One of those vehicles was a Metropolitan Transportation Authority bus that had been struck by a black Mercedes-Benz. The collision had rendered both vehicles immobile. The Mercedes immediately began engulfed in flames. The two occupants were still buckled inside the vehicle and incapacitated by the impact. A large crowd of onlookers was yelling for someone to get the people out of the Mercedes. For approximately 3 to 5 minutes, in the potentially explosive environment, Officers Carlisle and Brooks rushed in to remove both occupants. Officer Brooks immediately requested fire and police resources. Officer Carlisle immediately assessed the situation and directed his partner, Officer Brooks, to remove the driver from the vehicle while he attempted to remove the passenger. Without regard for their own lives or safety, and with the help of unknown citizens, the officers approached the burning Mercedes. Officer Carlisle opened the back door behind the woman, but was unable to remove the seatbelt. He then ran around to the front of the car, smashed open the window from the front passenger side with the handle of his knife, and proceeded to cut the seatbelt from the passenger. However, both of her legs were pinned by the dashboard. The smoke and the fire had started to come through the firewall of the Mercedes and began to engulf the front passenger compartment. Officer Carlisle could feel the intensity of the heat from the fire and began ingesting smoke. Undaunted, Officer Carlisle began ripping away part of the dashboard and successfully freed the woman's legs. Officer Carlisle, with the assistance of an unidentified citizen, carried the woman away from the fire. Meanwhile, Officer Brooks was engaging in attempting to remove the driver. The man's legs had been engulfed by the fire and were literally burning. The fire then began to spread into the passenger front compartment. An unidentified citizen requested Officer Brooks' knife so he could cut the seatbelt from the driver, while Officer Brooks pulled the driver out of the car through the door window. Officer Brooks and the citizen then carried the driver away from the fire. At this point, the bus was on fire, and the natural gas tanks on top of the bus became engulfed in flames, followed by a large explosion. Officer Carlisle and Brooks used their bodies to shield both occupants from the blast and from the debris. Officer Carlisle redeployed his police vehicle to use as a shield against the fire and further explosions. Officer Carlisle carried the woman passenger behind his vehicle as Officer Brooks and the unidentified citizen assisted with redeploying the driver behind the police vehicle. Officer Carlisle and Brooks remained by her side until the paramedics arrived and relieved them. Los Angeles Fire Department personnel stated that Carlisle and Brooks, had they not responded the way they did, the outcome would have been tragic. Officers Carlisle and Brooks suffered smoke inhalation, abrasions, and lacerations on their hands and arms from the broken glass. The courageous actions of Officers John Carlisle and Garrett Brooks reflect the highest standard of the Los Angeles Police Department. Their bravery, decisiveness, and life-saving actions are worthy of the department's highest award. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any comments on this item?
We have none, sir.
Well, I, for one, I'm sure I speak on behalf of the entire commission, applaud the heroic actions of these officers and enthusiastic move this item. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you.
Were they able to recognize the citizen that helped the officers, Phil?
I don't think they were identified. And then it was definitely a partnership, and I remember when that happened, the news videos interviewed a number of people, but I don't think they were able to establish who they were because they left.
They were wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go back to the regular order of the agenda, and we can go to item 3A now.
Okay. We're now on item number 3A, Inspector General's report dated September 6, 2017, relative to the review of kit room and cadet program procedures.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I'm Assistant Inspector General Kevin Rogan, sitting in for Acting Inspector Django Sibley, who's at NACO this week. Subsequent to the June 14th incident in which the department arrested cadets for theft of police vehicles, you directed our office to conduct a review of the kit room and cadet program procedures. In order to gather the information for this report, we assembled a team of OIG employees, and they visited 23 divisions and met with LAPD employees to learn from them how the procedures worked. I want to acknowledge my team. It's auditors Lisa Ridout and John Gross-Didier, and investigators Florence Yu and Dave Andrews. To coordinate those meetings, the department went to great lengths to facilitate our meeting with the kit room officers and cadet officers, and I wish to acknowledge the department's cooperation. There were a lot of meetings to put together, and assembling the people was a hard task. We interrupted the operations at 23 divisions, and they were very cordial about allowing us to come in and meet the officers, and we appreciate the cooperation and assistance. The purpose of this review was not to review the June 14th incident. That is an ongoing criminal investigation, and we did not occupy ourselves with that, but rather we took an overview of how the kit room worked and the cadet procedures. Regarding the kit room, you'll see that we only have 4 recommendations, and part of the reason for that is because of the way the kit room functions. The primary function of the kit room, as we understand it, is to provide officers at the start of their watch with equipment, and then at the end of the watch to collect the equipment. And only the secondary function is the inventory control. If the audience of people receiving the equipment were uncontrolled, if we were giving to members of the public, inventory would be a more pressing concern. But the fact is, the pressing concern is getting police officers on the street. So while we observe security violations. We understand that it became a convenience item. And something like stealing a police car is very much a low-risk occurrence. In my 35 years associated with law enforcement, I've heard of police cars being stolen, but it's generally by suspects slipping handcuffs or people being left unattended in a police car. There was a case out of state last week that was on the news. You may have seen a woman crawl through the divider and take a police car. And there have been cases when officers bail out of a police car and leave the keys in the ignition. But having somebody actually take keys from the kit room is just a low-risk occurrence. And we're not recommending that the department attempt to build a security system to stop a once-in-a-35 or 50-year occurrence. Rather, we understand that on some of the cases, for example, where the cart was left in an area of an obstruction, some of that deals with old architecture. You've been to the central area station, and it's old, and it's cramped. And when officers at the end of watch come in, and they come in at an unusual time because they've been overtime booking or at the hospital or something, and there's nobody in the kit room to assist them, really the primary concern is to get the officer home, to get them off their shift. And because it's in a secure environment with other sworn personnel, we understand that leaving it in the cart is an acceptable practice. The department already had rules that said don't leave the cart in an unsupervised area. And in response to our review and the department's own review, Assistant Chief Mike Moore from Operations sent out a memo reminding everybody about the rules that already exist. For example, don't leave doors propped open because it's convenient, and don't leave a cart unattended.
Don't rape children.
But we didn't feel it was necessary to repeat those recommendations in our list. The one item that we do think needs to be corrected is the computer issue, where anybody in the department can access the computer from their desk, and that seems to be a pretty simple remedy. We've been invited to join a work group with the operations, and we'll be exploring things, for example, preloading the ID cards so that when somebody checks out equipment, the data fields are populated more quickly and more easily to make it more convenient for the checkout of equipment. Regarding the cadet program.
Let's stick with the kit room for now. Any questions relating to the kit room?
Just the response of the department to your 4 recommendations?
They agreed with them. We were invited to meet with Chief Moore and his group. We explained to them the items that we found, and they had already previewed us that their findings, which were very much the same as ours. None of these problems are really hidden, and the department is very open to our suggestions. That's why they invited us to the work group to look as the first step to see about pre-programming the computer so that not everybody can access.
And is there a timeline for implementation?
That I don't know. The department would have to respond about when that can be done.
Thank you.
What was the question, Shane?
Timeline.
Oh, timeline, okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So in regards to and I'll hit these really quickly, the 4, we basically restricted access to the kit system, the kit room access to the watch commanders, assigned kit room officers, the assigned kit room supervisors, and any watch commander designees. So nobody can log in from anywhere, from any time or any place. It's just restricted to those 4 people on a daily basis.
So that was one of the more troubling things
Yes,
that
sir.
That
That has been remedied, and we have put a notice out to all commands effective immediately.
Okay.
Actually, it was
And
probably
is it
about 30
tracked
days ago.
then if someone's making changes, who in fact made those changes?
Yes, it is. It's audited on a daily basis.
Okay.
To move forward on the kit system is currently being modified by ITB and ITA personnel to utilize the officer's actual ID and the RFID chip to check out and check in equipment on a daily basis. That is currently in progress. ITB is working on that right now. They should be finishing that up shortly. The inspections of the kit room now, we conduct a twice daily kit room inspection on the primary watches, watch 2 in the morning and watch 3 in the evening. There is now a daily checklist where every kit room officer will conduct a daily inventory inspection of all equipment that's been checked out within the last 24 hours. And unlike before, what we do now is immediately launch into an investigation into any missing equipment which is reported missing within that 24-hour period, and don't stop until we locate that. We have now also
I assume that would include car keys.
Yes, sir. Car keys, everything, every piece of equipment that is in the kit room, all of the Rovers, the Astros, the beanbags, shotguns, everything. And then we also have, at the first week of every DP, we have a full inventory inspection that is conducted, and that is given to the watch commander over everything. There's a physical inventory of all vehicles. They go out to the parking lot. They check for every vehicle that's assigned not only to patrol but everywhere to the area, which includes narcotics cars, vice cars, gang, everything is basically inspected for that one time a month, and ultimately given to the watch commander, discussed with the area and patrol commanding officers. So there is ultimately thorough control over all of the inventories of all the kit room equipment and vehicles. And then the last thing is, from the OIG's recommendation is they have been invited to participate in what we're doing is a kit room best practices working group, and we are working to make the kit room checkout, check-in procedures effective and efficient and secure as possible. The focus, once again, is they want to look at staffing with civilians. We are looking at that as an option. We want to make sure that there is continuity of effort, that it isn't just the next person up, that ultimately we have the individuals that are assigned to those kit rooms to ensure the security of all of that equipment. So what we're looking at is full-time, either civilian and or sworn, or a combination thereof. They're going to be working with that right now, and they're pushing forward to that to get a resolution very quickly.
Great. Could we get a report back from the progress of the working group in 60 days?
Yes, sir, you can.
Any other questions or comments related to the kit room? Okay, thank you. It's good. We can go to the cadet program now. Thank you, Commander.
We do have 5 public
We're
comment cards.
not through with the report.
Oh, okay.
We're only halfway through the report.
Regarding the cadet program, we met with a number of the youth service officers, and I just want to remind that no youth service officers were involved in the June 14th incident. What we found is that the officers as a group were very excited about the work they do, very vested in their interactions with the cadets, and anecdotally, the cadet program itself has been very successful, a large increase in numbers. I think the chief mentioned in a news release last week that actually that fast expansion may have contributed to the fact that the cadet manual hadn't been updated for some time. Commander Burt has already undertaken, while we were doing our review, had finished his first round of updates on the manual, and we think it's a good suggestion that he is soliciting from the youth service officers more input on fine-tuning that manual to make it work better. Our recommendations were essentially in 4 areas. One is the YSO selection and training. There is a generalized selection criteria in the manual. We're suggesting that it become more specified and a sheet developed, and I think Commander Burt has already responded to that comment. And we're suggesting that a defined curriculum be developed, and again, I think you're working on that already, if I recall correctly. And some specialized training provided to the cadets, because they not only teach in the police-related area and police manual, but they also act as youth counselors. And it would be important for them to receive training in youth counseling methods. The second area that we commented on was the financing of the program. The program at one point in time, several of the area posts were responsible for their own fundraising. There's been a transition that's actually still in process where the department is standardizing what they call a purchasing card system, where each YSO can use a card. It's like an ATM or debit card that they can use to pay for cadet expenses. But there have been some glitches with that system. Some vendors are not comfortable with a card that lists the business and not the cadet, or excuse me, not the YSO's name. Some businesses are cash only, and there's a limited petty cash fund. And there's an issue with the time lapse between the time from which donations are made. You had several donations listed today. For example, the Hollywood Bowl or Dodgers will donate. But that takes several weeks before the donated cash is available for the cadets to use in their programs. So we've recommended that the department explore those problems with the P-card and see if a more refined or streamlined process can be developed where the funds are made available to the cadet posts sooner than the normal donation process. We also made some observations about record keeping, the types of forms that are used, ensuring that parental consent forms are kept on file for things like how a kid is picked up after a meeting. Some of the kids rely on mass transit, and we want to make sure that there's a record that that was approved by parents and no kid is walking out into the street without somebody knowing exactly where they're going. And the, I don't recall what the last issue was. Social media is one that we talked about in the communication. We relied on some best practices, and we recommend, in fact, I talked with Commander Burt, that we recommend that the department also do that review in considering something like social media. The department has guidelines, but they're not as strict, for example, as the Boy Scouts of America, which have a requirement always of a 2-on-1 rule. So those are the 12 recommendations are specified. That's the general group of the recommendations, and we have found a very good response.
Excuse me, hold on one second. Can I please have quiet in the audience so we can hear the report? If you, ma'am, if you have a comment, please submit a card and we'll be happy to hear it. Ma'am, please stop disrupting the meeting so we can continue with this report.
As a last step, then I met with Commander Burt just before this report was released, and we fine-tuned the recommendations. The department agrees with the recommendations that we've made and is already in the process of implementing many of them.
Thank you. Commissioner, questions?
I have one. On the boosters issue, and it's a hard, I think it's sort of a tightrope. Someone in a neighborhood likes the cadet program, they see that something's wrong, they want to donate an air conditioner, they want to donate a chalkboard, they want to donate whatever. I don't want them to be discouraged from doing that because somebody says to them, well, if you're going to do it here, you got to do it there. How do you continue to encourage the boosters and also get some sort of parity between the areas that need it?
I think that's a tough question. I think Commander Burt had some great examples. We discussed this topic, and he described what the department is already doing in some cases to try to mitigate those disparity issues.
All right. When it comes to boosters, like the reason clearly we have a P card is that we believe we should see where funds are coming from. So a division isn't getting donations, $1,000 from some club that is tied to nightlife or something that could reflect poorly on the department, could reflect poorly on the program. So the purchasing card program is set.
Okay, ma'am, please, if you have a comment, please feel free to submit it. We're in the middle of this report. We'd like to get all the information out, then you can comment.
That's essentially the main reason for the P card system is that we, the FOD, the city controller, has an idea where our funds are coming from. We have a tracking process for that, a department-wide tracking process. So we don't have 21 individual people donating. The process is cumbersome, particularly when you talk to youth service officers on the ground level. We just got a call in my office yesterday. A carnival that occurred in one of the divisions back in April, still haven't received the funds, and those are concerns, and it is cumbersome. And I personally agree with the IG that it's a process we can work through, and we can hopefully streamline a little better. When it comes to dealing with disparity, which was recommendation number 8 out of the cadet program report, consider impacts of financial disparity and methods to promote uniformity experiences across all cadet posts. These are challenges. They're challenges socially when one works in Topanga or one works in Southeast. There are differences, and there are communities with deeper pockets in different parts of LA, and we recognize that. But part of what Chief Beck did in promoting the youth programs unit itself is that we do everything we can to establish opportunities for all the kids. That's the whole function of the Cadet Academy, to give out scholarships uniformly to and to give citywide social events. 2 weeks ago, all of them participated in a picnic that no cost to them, obviously, up in Thousand Oaks. We have banquets. We're having another banquet in November. We just on October 21st, we're taking 300 kids to a UCLA football game. It's a first for us. We also invite everyone to the all the events we do. The Memorial Run, we had 700 kids from all over the city participate in that. So the Youth Programs Unit itself does what it can to balance that out. When we see a disparity in vans, for example, that was one of our recommendations. Is some of our people are running on really old vans. We look to square that away and give the best vans to the people that need it the most. So.
Okay.
So it's a really important issue for us to have some equanimity in this, but also to allow individuals and communities to be attached to their own youth
Sure.
program, which is really important.
Yep.
Foundations of community policing, that's what we do.
Right.
But one of the balances that Jeff's office brings is just that, is to be able to use single donors to help with things like the really big items, the hard items, getting them through the academy, getting them shoes, getting them uniforms, getting all their meals taken care of in the academy and that type of thing. And so that is done at a department-wide level, so that it isn't just up to the divisions that will fund their own academy. And then when Ms. Torres was in charge, we began doing citywide events with kids, and Disneyland, or as Jeff said, the USC game, these kind of things where everybody's invited and is paid for through a single donor and not individually. So, I think you always have to just like everything else we do, it's a balance. You don't want to make it all, one top-down funding stream that is bulky and doesn't recognize the differences of programs and doesn't reward divisions that quite frankly put more enthusiasm into their program, and I don't want to take away from them.
Right.
So I think you just have to have the balance, and we recognize and thank the IG for also recognizing that there is a disparity throughout the city, and it's something we have to deal with, whether it's policing or youth programs or anything else we do.
Yeah. So I know one of the recommendations dealt with the post-academy curriculum, and I do think along the lines of making sure that these kids have a similar experience, that we do more to standardize that experience across all divisions. And I know a lot of that does go to the funding, and it is a balance of encouraging local businesses, local individuals are going to want to support something that's local to them. At the same time, we do have some very large donors, like the Ray Charles Foundation, which we can use to kind of equalize things across the city. Because one of the things is, and this applies to education and lots of things, the kids that need it the most are probably in the communities that have the least to offer. Right. So I want to make sure that in those communities where you don't have the businesses, where you don't have the individuals that are able to write the checks to the program, that those kids are getting as positive and an experience as possible, and they're getting as much out of it as a kid in a more wealthy division. So I know that's something we're looking at, and it's something that I will happy to be a part of looking at that as well.
Sir?
Yes.
It's very near and dear to my heart just to say that the department we have been active, the Youth Programs Unit, and we recognize the disparity. So, for the example, this last year, using funds from Ray Charles Foundation, we employed Mr. Ramsey J. He's a motivational speaker. He works very closely with Ray Charles Foundation, and he is an author. And so we used his book, and in 4 of the South Bureau divisions and then Newton, we've taught his course for a 6-week course to all the cadets, basically allowing them to so the concept is dreamers to become achievers, and encourages kids to think, keep a journal, and goes through this. So there's a price tag on that, but we're going systematically through the whole department. But we recognize that, and we've already we make a lot of progress with that with youth programs as well. We've partnered very closely with the Watts Bears and brought down UCLA and USC football players to meet with them, and that's again, to try and give kids opportunities and ideas that they may not have had.
And luckily, the philanthropy in the city recognizes the disparity, and Jeff just mentioned a number of donors who are more than willing to support the entire city, but they really want their money to go to the places that need it the most, and so we're very fortunate that way, and most of our donors, our big donors, want their money to go into the inner city and want their money to go into the places that have the least. And that's where we concentrate our programs. I think, and you go to the graduations, you see who has the big classes, and many times there are toughest divisions.
I'm sure it is. It just hasn't been mentioned. But disparity also in conditions in which all the cadets in different areas do their learning experiences. I mean, I've been to some where they're double wides with air conditioning, and I've been to some where the conditions are a lot less. And so when there are big discrepancies, or if there is a division that really needs something specific from even a capital perspective, in order for the environment to be to eliminate any of the disparity in environment, I'm interested.
Okay, sir. There is that absolutely exists. So
I know it does.
I'd be willing to work with you on that anytime.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship with the Dodgers and the Hollywood Bowl? I know that they've both been very big supporters of the police department and these programs. I just noted we obviously have the cadets out there, and I think it's good for the cadets to frankly be in that environment, but they're also getting a great service by having those kids out there performing those functions. Do you feel that that's a fair relationship in terms of the value the department's receiving in comparison to the service that we're providing them by having these kids out there helping them at these venues?
I think it's fair, and I think for more than just maybe what the department's getting out of it, but what the kids experience by learning a sense of volunteerism, a sense of service, a sense of community service, and the interactions they get with the public. I think that's been. I think the money, we have a salary range that is listed in our report, but. Excuse me, the Inspector General's report, that I think is fair. I think for us, we revisited the Hollywood Bowl. All of these ventures, we really are most concerned as a department on the safety of the cadets. So, for example, the Hollywood Bowl system, we really tightened it down this last year to make sure the kids were safe, that they weren't out on some post up in a dark alley somewhere. And that's been a good relationship. I do think it's fair, but I think the most important thing is the work experience the kids get with it. Yes, sir.
Great. Now, I know we touched on social media, and we touched on the communications between the youth service officers and the cadets, and I know that's something that's still under evaluation. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one of the things I want to, and I know that one of the issues that was identified is that the youth service officers have department phones, and I want to make sure that all communication in that regard is on department phones, not on personal phones. And some of the things that the Boy Scouts and other organizations like Boys and Girls Club we should be looking at all of that. So, and I'll skip. There should be, just like we have with the kit room, there's a working group on instituting those recommendations and the updating of that. There should similarly be a working group with respect to the changes to the cadet program.
Yes.
And I would suggest that Mr. Tiefenk, are you okay with me asking you to be a part of that working group?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I'll work with my fellow commissioners to see. I don't want there are so many issues, and just reading the revised manual and the revised guidelines there's a lot in there. And obviously, with the recommendations that came out of the department's report a few months ago, this report, there's a lot to do. It's a great program. I think everybody on this commission is fully behind it and fully supportive of it. We want to make sure that our kids are getting the most out of it, and we're providing the service in a safe an environment and as effectively as possible. So I think it's important that we create a working group, and Mr. Rogan, also if there could be someone from the IG's office, obviously be a part of that as well, and we can work out those details later. But I think that's critically important on moving this forward. As we know, there was out of this investigation, it was disclosed that a young girl was raped by a police officer, not a youth service officer. And a lot of the reports and the manuals deal with the training that we're giving our youth service officers and the guidelines around their interactions. Excuse me. Training
has nothing to do with pedophiles.
Ma'am, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, I'm going to ask you to leave.
You've heard what I said.
A lot of this is addressing how the youth service officers are being trained and the guidelines around their interactions with with our cadets. Are the proper safeguards in place regarding the parameters on how non-youth service officers are to engage with cadets? Obviously, they're in the same environment, they're in the same buildings, they're around each other. There's appropriate contact and there's inappropriate contact. I want to make sure that we're paying equal attention to those rules and guidelines as well.
Well, you can talk about the how we've clarified all that, Jeff, in your most recent orders.
Okay, so the chief of police released an OCOP notice that sets very specific guidelines with use to social media, but further, the use of the communications is to be limited to YSOs when we're using social media specifically. So
But there's also person-to-person communication. I mean, they're in the same building.
Right.
This started because he was in the kit room and the cadets were hanging around the kit room.
So the department the OCOP notice defines one-on-one interactions, and that was first and foremost in the June Office of the Chief of Police notice came out. That is what that's the concern, is the one-on-one interactions, and that isn't relative to just youth service officers. That's relative to every officer. That is prohibited, and I think to say does it go far enough? It's a policy. It's something that we're going to inspect. It's part of our coming inspection schedule, and but it's tough to say when people do bad things. They sneak under the radar, and I think these are good systems. I think they're sound practices that we put in place, and I think they're practices that can be inspected. So.
Well, but I think it goes further than that. A lot of it is the message that you send to the organization about what is acceptable conduct. And one of the reasons that I personally arrested and personally ensured the prosecution of and served search warrants at and did all the things that we did when we found out that this happened was to make sure that every member of this police department, and I followed up with messaging within the department, that every member of this police department knows exactly where I stand on this and exactly what will happen to them should they run afoul of my standards on this. So, I think, part of it is what we do in this room for policy and what we, what we do with the media, but a lot of it is the gut reaction of knowing that if you are to do this, that I am going to personally put you in jail and prosecute you vigorously. And this goes far beyond what would happen to anybody else in any other profession that this occurred in. This is the hammer that I have, and so I think it's important that the organization understands that.
So and thank you, sir. And that was articulated in the chief's message in July. Chief's message. It was articulated to the sea of folks that attended the cadet graduation, and then. Chief Beck personally met with all the YSOs to articulate his very early on, a couple days after the event broke. And then when we did our I did a one-day training of all YSOs when we released the manual. We got all the officers in charge of the Crow units, and both Chief Beck and Chief Moore arrived. And again, at that training, Chief Beck was clear about his expectations when dealing with children. The theme from my office to officers, and it was articulated at the graduation, I think, is we really are all youth service officers. That is our responsibility, the young, the old, the sick, the people that need our help. And that's a message we're going to obviously continue pushing out, sir.
Great. One of the things I want to make sure that this working group tackles is the ratio of cadets to youth service officers. And
Okay.
I think that ratio, we have a wide range of age with the cadets. And I want to make sure that we are appropriately, this may not be one size fits all. For younger kids, you probably, you need to have more youth service officers than with older kids, but the ratio in some instances, 60-to-1 was way too high. So I want to make sure that that's something we're looking at. And unfortunately, if it means that we have to cut back on the size of the program, then we have to cut back on the size of the program. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we can have enough youth service officers to have each of these different, whether it's a classroom or a physical fitness or something at Dodger Stadium, we have the right level of staffing to make sure that the kids are properly looked after. So I know that was something that was identified, and I just want to make sure that that is something that the working group is looking at as well. And I would like a report back on this also, overall, how we're progressing on all of these things in 60 days and as well, if that time frame works.
Yes, sir.
And other questions, that's it for me, but any other questions or comments?
Mr. President, I think your idea of a working group, if it was your idea or whoever your idea was, I think is a great one. From the commission's perspective, I'd be happy this is my 50th year as a Big Brother in Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've been chairman, I've been president, and I've had the same little brother for 49 and a half years. I'm really familiar with these kinds of relationships, and also how best practices in an organization like Big Brothers Big Sisters can be probably helpful. So I would volunteer.
Excellent.
To go on that working group with Mr. Tiefank.
Accepted.
Appreciate that, sir. We've just in the meantime, we tackled span of control concepts because we saw and heard some of the same concerns. Page 15 of our youth programs manual, I rewrote with input from a lot of the leadership of the department, rewrote the span of control to make more clearly that it's based on safety and effectiveness, and then gave very specific examples of when we're driving, when we're doing overnights, and laid down some very specific rules. But I didn't do that in a vacuum. We've been working to get research from both the Department of Recreation and Parks, LAUSD, and what their after-school programs look like. And we are yesterday we are talking to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to see what they do. Sheriff's Explorers. So we're really trying to put together a robust report. By the end of September, we'll have a report that kind of breaks down span of control, supervision, age of supervisors, age of volunteers, what kind of backgrounds do people do on those, to see where we sit in the spectrum and to see what we can learn and tighten up.
Let's expand that to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I'll create the relationship for you to learn what their processes are.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate the systematic way in which we are looking at how to best staff and continue these programs. I know that we're going to have an awful lot of feedback around the appropriateness of the programs. Commissioner Johnson's indicated that he's certain that commissioners are supportive, and I want to be clear that I am. I mean, the fact of the matter is there are predators in every walk of life. There is not a single institution that has not been beset by individuals. Well, let me finish, and that's my point. I do want to differentiate or create or have us distinguish the way in which and what's appropriate to do when we identify a predator, and that is to prosecute them and to lock them up. We don't shut down schools, we don't shut down hospitals, we don't shut down any place where this occurs. So shutting down the cadet program for me isn't the place that I go. I would hope, and where additional feedback would be most useful, would be around observation as it relates to the kinds of systems and policies and protections that should be in place in order to ensure to the maximum extent possible that our programs are operated in a safe and effective manner. And so I will be listening carefully for that kind of information and those kinds of critiques of the reports. But, but I do want to just underscore the reality that we all have to face, and that is there are, people that are monstrous, and they will do monstrous things, and there is nothing that will prevent that from occurring.
Thank you.
Good point.
Any other commissioner questions or comments? Thank you. And I know you personally spend a lot of your time and energy and your belief in the program, and your just the heart you bring into it does not go unnoticed by this commission, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just thank all the folks from the IG's office who worked on this. I think it's a very thorough, thoughtful report that the recommendations are sound and solid. And I just thank you for your professionalism and your input and your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you to the IG's office for the excellent work on this report. Thank you.
Sorry.
You want to call the comment?
I'll just add, of course, to the chorus of support for the program and appreciation of the report and the high level of oversight, accountability, and transparency you're bringing to this for the public and for the commission.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we do have 7 comment cards. The first one, Mr. Herman, followed by Tiffany Guerra, Paula Miner, and Hamid Khan.
Ma'am, could you please stop disrupting the meeting? It's your last warning.
Well, now that we're dealing with the conduct of employees of the Los Angeles Police Department, and the fine Mr. Rogan pointed out, it's just low risk. It's okay. It's definitely okay to let kids take equipment that doesn't belong to them. Because I sure hell am tired of fucking working and paying for equipment for police officers to lose, take home, and abuse, let alone abuse children. I love what the ladies are saying, because the ladies' heart is in the issue. The issue is, why are officers fucking young kids? That's the issue. The issue has nothing to do with taking a car. I leave my cars in the keys because I have in the car keys because there's insurance on the goddamn car, so you can steal it. But when you leave the keys in the car for children to take out on a joyride, when you let officers take the kids to their home for barbecues, that's because the parent's not responsible to be watching their goddamn kid. The parent should go along with the kid to the barbecue at all times. But I would never trust the police. I would never trust the police for the same reason back in 2010 or so when you took me to that institution across the street and swabbed my mouth and stuck me in that fucking cell and threw me up against the wall with handcuffs on. That's really fucked up. So I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and yes, I am upset. I'm very upset. I'm upset of the program. I know what it's like to deal with kids. I've worked with kids longer than any of you motherfuckers, and I know what's wrong. Responsibility, liability, and the policies that you disrupt in our lives. So you must stop bringing these issues through the levels of review and deal with it on a time basis now.
So it was really discouraging to hear the level of investigation that went into kit room violations. But it took how many minutes for anyone to acknowledge that a person was raped and that this wasn't the first time? You were talking about police cars and how you didn't want to create a policy for something that happens once every 50 years, a police car being taken. What about the fact that there is a pattern of sexual abuse that's been going on in this program and that this is the 29th person to allege sexual misconduct or rape? And so we know that far more than that has actually been going on. That's just the number that was reported. What about that? So nowhere did we hear recognition of the fact that the LAPD has a toxic culture of masculinity or treating women and girls like they are disposable, and that their experiences, whether they're calling for help, whether they're someone who's actually calling for help, like in a domestic violence situation, and officers arrive at the scene, or being trained as a cadet, that their experiences don't matter, because in both those situations we see people getting abused. And nowhere do we see recognition of the LAPD's culture to be silent and deny that there's a problem, which is what we see here today. And it's surreal and it's chilling and it's just making me shake. Nowhere did we see the Inspector General raise the question of how culture contributed to the rape of this cadet, or how that will contribute to the harm of other cadets, because none of that was discussed. None of that was discussed. David Finkelhor is the director of Crimes Against Children Research Center, and he studies child victimization and other issues. When discussing the over 150 cases of sexual abuse of youth in Explore programs nationwide, he referred to the program as an intimate setting for potential abuse. He said that specifically about ride-alongs, which were part of the cadet program in 2014, but were not mentioned anywhere in this report. And just that fact alone, that these abuses have been going on for decades in programs nationwide. Was the LAPD not aware of this trend? The LAPD prides itself on being able to predict crime before it happens by entering the names of black and brown youth in databases and stalking them. But when it comes to cops, the LAPD is unaware of highly significant trends of sexual abuse and assault that happens within departments.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Thank you. Your next speaker, Paula Miner.
Paula Miner, Black Lives Matter. We continue to advocate that the cadet program be removed from LAPD, and based on just the information obtained today, we will continue to take that advocacy to different levels. It is just interesting the amount of time that was spent on talking about the kit room, equipment, and supplies. The city of LA continues to charge LAPD with doing non-law enforcement activities like running youth programs, and they're having difficulty keeping up with necessary responsibilities. The lack of security with the kit room and supplies has absolutely nothing to do with the cadet program. A room is either secure, supplies are either secure, or they are not. A system is in place, has nothing to do with the cadet program. So the fact that you all, the commission, listed numerous youth organizations that LAPD needs to talk to figure out how to run the programs supports the fact that perhaps those are some of the entities that should be running the program. The other thing is that we emphasize physical education. We emphasize ushering at the Dodgers and ushering at the Hollywood Bowl. That these are the ways that we develop character integrity. Evidently not, because 8 cadets thought it was okay to violate the kit room weak security. Why? Because nobody said, maybe there should be more integrity. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's part of the training that our USO officers are not getting. So we will continue to advocate that this program be removed, and we will continue to talk to people who seem to be more concerned about it than our commission.
The next speakers Hamid Khan, Gina DiPietro, Prentice Jenkins, and Wayne from Encino.
On July 24th, 2017, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, Black Lives Matter, and Los Angeles Community Action Network submitted a timeline and a history of LAPD domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse dating back to the beginning of these programs. And what was very clear that came out of that was that the abuse of children and women is persistent over time, that the targets are varied, there's a pattern of verbally diminishing the seriousness of rape and abuse, there's a history of sexual abuse within law enforcement youth programs across the country, and many of them are dropping these programs. Many incidents go unreported and not made public. Supervisors often fail to protect victims. Officers who abuse are often treated with leniency. I mean, I'm reminded going back to 1976 when the Law Enforcement Explorer Girls program, where the LAPD supervisors, that the camping trip, and this was reported by one of the LEEGS cadets, and I quote, that the trips were little more than orgies. 6 cops had sex with 16 teenage women. Coming down to 2017, when Officer Clifford Proctor was charged with domestic violence and all. So I think the question here lies, and this is to you, Mr. Rogan, that, I mean, is this a memo or an audit? Because we know what's going on. So there is no serious investigation of a pattern of abuse. Cynthia McLean-Hill, you spoke about other institutions. Do you think if there was a history of 43 years of sexual abuse, the schools will continue to be funded? Do you think other institutions would continue to be funded, or they would be stopped, and the program would be stopped and a very serious investigation would take place? Do you think the program would continue in all seriousness? Would you allow your children to go to those schools? Would you allow your children to go to these institutions? You're naming Boys and Girls Club as well, Sober Off, and you are a part of that too. They have a history of child abuse too, and there have been things, and they were just sued. And don't say bullshit. Don't say bullshit.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
So it is again goes back to the same thing. It's a rubber stamping. It is the same internal investigation.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Gina DiPietro.
Good morning, LAPD Commission. I'm Gina DiPietro.
Morning.
And good morning. I had the privilege and honor of getting to watch the cadets do work at the LA Police and Fire Games. They helped out at the LA Coliseum, assisting people from all over the world, police officers and firemen from all over the world, to their seats. They were also in the parade. They were serious. They did their job with professionalism, and I think that they're fantastic, and I appreciate what they're doing for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prentice Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. When I was in the first grade, they showed us a picture of a gentleman named Officer Friendly. And he was a tall white officer in his uniform. And he was holding the hand of a little white girl, blonde-haired white girl. And we were all, all the kids, this is like 51 years ago, all the kids were excited, with the exception of me. I saw subtext. The first thing I asked was, how do they know he's friendly? Do they actually know his personal life? And second, where's he going with the little girl? I said that in the first grade. Now, 90-something% of the officers, if that was the officer, were just taking the little girl where she was supposed to go. But we do have that 1%, the one that had sex with that 15-year-old girl. So as a kid, if I'm saying that as a kid, right, I didn't know I was, had a problem with authority. I had a problem with authority even in the first grade. I'm not saying all officers are pedophiles. 99% of them aren't. But we just found out one was. He had sex with a 15-year-old girl. And yes, Chief Beck put the handcuffs on him. Thank you for doing that. But one of the things we can't do is get rid of that program. Because Carter created a program back in the 70s and to put 14-year-olds to work. And it had problems, but guess what? It kept me off the street, me and my idiot friends. Kept us from going to jail, that program. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep your program and watch your cops.
Wayne from Encino.
Okay, go ahead.
Welcome to the new puppet, Mr. Rogan. Thank you for being a puppet. And then we have the four of them. Did Steve say that it's bullshit? Okay. I'm a puppet. No children were raped, yes. Nobody stole a police cruiser and drove to the city of Inglewood and impersonated a police officer, right? Well, see, the problem is the mayor of Inglewood, his name is Mayor Butts, Butts. He changed his name to Butts because he kicks ass. And so he knows you went into his city and violated his city with your underage police impersonators. But he's okay because he's going to take the Los Angeles Clippers and build a stadium as compensation not to sue you. So that's good. That's a good deal. Trading the children for the Clippers and a new stadium. I move that it's a good trade. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. Thank you for the Los Angeles Clippers. Next, we'll take the Lakers and move them to Inglewood as compensation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Good. Finally, we move to tear down Staples Center that Steve Soboroff built and put a women and children's shelter in the place of the Staples Center because Steve is one of those rapist accomplices. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Good. Finally, get the fuck out of the city, Steve. Thank you.
We have no other comment cards, sir.
Okay. I'll move item 3A. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
We're now on item 3C, Department's report dated September 5th, 2017, relative to the Los Angeles Police Department's third quarter.
You had a card on this item?
Yes, well, not on this item, but I had a comment to speak. It's not time.
All right, not time.
Third quarter 2017, risk management and harm reduction strategy status report.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mr. President, members of the commission. My name is Mike Himes. I serve as the department risk manager. With me today is Captain Jennifer Thomas, who serves as the commanding officer of Risk Management Division, and a police performance auditor for John Doucette, who supervises our research and evaluation section. We can go ahead and provide you an overview of the data in the report or go straight to questions at your pleasure. Would you like the overview or the questions?
Does anybody want an overview or should we go right to questions? I'm fine either way. Questions?
Just questions, yeah.
Okay, we can go right to questions. Does anybody want to start? Okay, I'll start. I noticed that the majority of the traffic collisions were preventable. It doesn't seem we're making much progress on reducing and this is really not an audit report as much as a department an audit question as a department question. It doesn't seem that we're making much progress to reducing those numbers. It would be helpful to know what action, and this would be for a follow-up, what action's being taken in those instances where officers are involved in a preventable traffic collision, so we know if there's the right level of accountability so that maybe others will get the message that we need to reduce these numbers.
So there's a a system in place, and we can have a report. This is the risk manager is not the appropriate one to put that forward to you, but we can have that done in a discussion either in one of the discipline reports, in the quarterly report, or standalone, however you want.
Okay. Let's have a standalone. Let's have a standalone report on it, and you can let us know when you can pull that information together.
Yeah, the information is readily available. Just
Okay.
have to have the speakers present, give them some time to put it together.
Okay, great.
We
Sometime in October would be good.
We can set that up with Mr. Tiefan.
Okay. This is a structural, just trying to get to really how we're doing on tables 4, 9, and 12, which list settlements for different in different areas. As noted in the footnote, the settlement of claims does not correspond to what happened in any given year. Sometimes it might be 6 years ago, sometimes it might be 4 years ago. So it would actually be helpful to track on a year-by-year basis how we're doing. Obviously, in the most recent years, there's going to be a lot of outstanding claims, so it's not going to be that useful. But the further back we go, presumably there's fewer outstanding claims. So if we could go back to, say, like 2010, and there could be, for each one of those tables, a breakdown of what the settlements were, or either settlements or the results that ended up in a trial for incidents that arose in a given year, and also indicating how many claims are still outstanding. So and going back from 2010 to current.
We can do that. In fact, the original report we did back in February 2015 reached back to 2009. And for an example, we have one of the claims that was settled was a case that arose in 2009, and it was a $7 million settlement from a case. Was quite.
So that throws off the
throws off
numbers.
the
It looks like and we don't really have any context of how we're doing overall. I know a lot of work has been done by the department in some of these different areas to reduce exposure to these claims, but the way this report's formulated, it's very difficult to track our progress on that.
Well, one of the things that we find is that the receipt of claims is the leading indicator of what our future lawsuits are going to be. And for example, in the employment litigation area, our claims are down to 32 for this fiscal year. But then when you look at them qualitatively, the great majority of them, 21 of them, have to do with disciplinary matters, writs, for not resolved type of complaints. The majority of them, then you look qualitatively within the claim itself, and the fact pattern and the exposure is less than what we've seen in past. So that's a good indicator, is looking at our claims and the quality of those claims, for future.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why it would be great for that report to include the number of open claims from a given year, too.
Certainly.
On page 14 of the report, it references Executive Directive 18. Do you have a timeline of when that report will be available?
I'm sorry.
It's on page 14. It references Executive Directive 18. And it references a report that's being done.
That's the mayor's report, and we actually provided that information. That part of that information comes from the personnel division, because it's heavily focused on the work compensation, workplace injury issues.
So when they have that report, I think it would be of interest. It would be of interest to the commission to have them present that report to us also.
Certainly.
So that report is being put together by the personnel office?
Yes, with some contributions from us.
Okay. If you could reach out to them and let them know that we would like a presentation of that as well. And if they need to hear from us directly, we can do that.
Do you have enough samples with this to do means and medians versus just the gross numbers, because they're so thrown off by outliers?
Well, that's one thing we look at. We do know, and that's why the mean and medians aren't good statistics for this, because if we say we have 85 particular settlements, it may show up that it's only $21,000 per, but that may include 2 cases that accounted for 65% of the total. So we do have that broken down, and we do have that information.
Okay.
Chief, there's a table on here, table 10, related to trends. And this specifically, table 10 relates to salary continuation, temporary disability payments. From a management perspective, what are your thoughts on these numbers? Is this high, way too high, just about right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
and if you want to spend some time and come back to us on that, that's fine.
Well, of course, they're always too high. But, you know, you would like to see these things way closer to zero, but that's not the reality of the system that we live within. I think, you know, given the system that we have for addressing this is about what we've seen. You know, I'd ask for Mike's input on this because his folks prepared the tables, but you know, the issues of salary and the issues of the disparity between sworn and civilian, you know, these are something that are very specific to the data that we get here. So,
I think, you know, if you look at the number of claims that are filed and then the number of people that actually take time off that need salary continuation, the numbers are actually fairly low, because even if 68% or out of 3,000 claims, 950 have salary continuation, over 2,000 do not. Out of those, the great majority, about 2/3 of them, have less than 30 days off during that period of time, so they do come back to work. That's one of the things that we're focusing on ways that we can get people back to work more quickly. Mm-hmm. I mean, people do get injured in the job, and we do things on a preventative basis, and then things, and we'll talk about some of the strategies that we have in the next report, you know, the things we're doing to try to, you know, continue to drive these numbers down. But historically, we've had about 3,200 claims on the sworn side for a great many years. So actually, we're down a couple hundred, you know, this year as compared to, you know, prior fiscal years. So,
and culturally, the organization reports all injuries, and so even if you don't plan on taking any time off work, and you just get seen quickly, we still report it. That's the culture of the organization. There are organizations that don't do that. If you don't take time off, there's no report. But that's not us, because we it's drilled into us from the beginning that, hey, you don't know what's going to happen to you later, and so we need to document this, and we need to find ways to prevent injury, so we need to document it. So all of those things. So that's one of the pieces, and then the other thing that makes it hard on the sworn and civilian comparison, or even comparing vocations against each other, is we have so many presumptive by law cases. You know, I mean, if you know, any back injury, you know, any heart issue, you know, these are presumptive.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot of frustration at the division level that there are folks that want to get back to work and have trouble getting the treatment they need as timely as they should. It's an issue I've brought up with the personnel department. I know that's less of a LAPD management issue as a personnel, but it's something we need to work on with them to greatly improve.
I've had discussions with the controller on this, and the controller is also very, very interested in this. And it may be that we need to make some macro changes to the system. You know, when a Los Angeles police officer goes in for medical treatment, the city pays for it one way or the other. Mm-hmm. Either it's through worker compensation or it's through your private insurance. And maybe we need to look at a single pocket system instead of this dual pocket system where there are two. You know, if Mike injures himself playing racquetball versus walking up the stairs, it becomes bifurcated. The treatment is totally different, but the patient's the same. The payer is the same, essentially. Right. Mm-hmm. So why do we have two systems, one of which has, you know, many issues, the things that we're dealing with here? I know that and as somebody that is clumsy and gets injured all the time, you know, I would much rather have it go through the private side, that private system, because I have more control and I can get back to work immediately. You know, where if I have to schedule through work comp surgery or whatever, then it's going to take a while. I mean, But the point being that there may be some macro changes, and we have discussed those, and I think that the city is willing to look at those, and this may be the first time. So, I think that we are always going to have these issues with these two disparate systems that are paid for by the same person and cover the same set of people. And we need to look at that and see if this is the best way to do this. There are maybe better ways. I don't know that this is ready for rolling out for discussion yet, but it's certainly something that I've talked to the controller about, and he is very interested in. So, there may be a better way.
I agree. Any other questions? Do we have comment on this item?
We have no comments on this item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Do I have a motion to approve the department's report? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. We're now on item 3E, Department's report dated August 30th, 2017, relative to the Air Support Division inspection.
Unless anybody objects, I think we can go to right to questions on this one. Objective 2, that failure rate's still not acceptable in my opinion. I'm surprised that on a follow-up audit that we weren't able to improve it better than that. So, I'd like to hear how we're going to fix it, and then I definitely would like a follow-up audit on this item to come back again, and I'd like to hear whether it's 6 months from now or when you think it's the appropriate period of time for you to come back.
6 months is very reasonable. The issue here was it was a human factor error. It was the calculations. Although we were tracking it on a monthly basis, the date was misprinted. So moving forward, what we did was we just had it automated. So
is this not an actual error or an actual failing in terms of the amount of training, or is this a clerical error?
It was both, which resulted in us passing the 180-day mark.
Okay. So the clerical error caused okay.
That is correct.
So, and you say that's fixed now because it's automated?
That's correct.
Feel it's fixed. Okay. So in 6 months, I'd like to have a follow-up audit. Any other questions or comments on this report?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
All right, thank you.
All
Any
right, thank you.
comments on this? Thank you.
We have 2 comment cards. We have Mr. Herman and Wayne from Encino.
Yes, good report, air support, and you'll be launching the drones with their little missiles pretty soon. Good job. That's what we need. I saw the report on TV. The drones have little tiny missiles on the front, and it says LAPD on it. Have you seen it? It's great. Got this little drone, It's got all these little bombers ready to drop bombs on South Central. Air support division. Yeah. So what are you gearing up for? Sounds like you're gearing up for like a war or something. What's that all about? You need to ground the air support. Okay. It's a waste of time. It's a perk. They're out of Van Nuys Airport. And all they do, they just fly the shit around, and they fly the city attorney from City Hall back to the valley. They fly the chief. You see them on the roof pads over here at City Hall East. They always land the helicopters. It's a shuttle service for VIPs. That's all it is. It's just a shuttle service. An overpaid, bloated boondoggle is all this fucking thing is. It's got nothing to do with public safety. Nobody benefits from it.
So
It's just,
this issue has nothing to do with.
it's about air support, division, and what a waste of fucking money it is. I think that's on topic, isn't it?
It's not on topic.
You,
so
you're already
either
being
get on
sued
topic
for
or
Brown Act
cede your time.
violations, defendants. So you don't have to. You can ask your city attorney, because I'll amend the complaint and add this shit today if you like. It's a piece of shit fucking division, and it's a waste of time. They don't have the expertise to handle this kind of equipment. I can't wait till one of these cadets steals one of those helicopters and fucking crashes it into Staples Center. I want to be there to watch that. You dumb motherfuckers.
Do we have any other?
Mr. Herman.
Oh, Mr. Herman.
I'm right here, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, when we deal with the air support, it's well needed, especially in minority neighborhoods where you guys have nicknamed the ghettos, and where most of us, unfortunately, have been born and raised and have our grassroots attached to. But not all of us are victims of criminal white-collar life when it comes to the air support. See, Viragosa was one of them, but we didn't talk about his sexual life. No, there's no need to. Yeah, we all know who he is. Low-life, first Hispanic mayor after how many years? But this is America, and we need the air support to deal with real issues like Mr. Spindler brought out. Drones and planes investigating criminals. We wouldn't have this if you would support the cadet program and actually send the kids to college rather than giving them banquets. You see, Mr. Soboroff? Billionaire developer, Staples Centers. Let's build an air support landing field there better, because it's closer to the home roots of where we all live. This way, the air support can actually use the drones to not entangle them into the helicopters that we talked about at the public safety meeting with that dibble dwarf fifth place loser, Mitch Englander, in which we decided to buy 2 new used helicopters rather than buying 1 brand new helicopter to protect the rank and file from being injured in a plane crash, as brought out by Mr. Spindler. Because likely a young cadet will get behind a helicopter due to the fact that, this is a reward you get for having sex with a helicopter flight attendant.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Do I have a motion to approve the department's report?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks for all you do, guys.
Thanks. Thank you.
We're now on item 3F, Department's Report, dated September 7th, 2017, relative to the report on the coordination of officers assigned to patrol or specialized assignments and to Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. I'm Deputy Chief Bob Green, the Commanding Officer of Transit Services Bureau. I brought with me Sergeant Mike Padilla, who is my HOPE coordinator at the Transit Services Bureau.
Good morning. Good morning. Do you want to just give us a brief overview?
So we're 10 weeks in to Transit Services Bureau. And overwhelmingly, although we are continuing to troubleshoot every day with 140 new people coming in every day, there are things that we can continue to tighten up. But it's going very, very well. Complaints have dropped on the system dramatically. The thing we struggle with is response time for emergency calls, because our model, looking at why we've changed police departments 4 times in the last 25 years, is take the officers out of black and whites and keep them on the system. And so for the rail itself, our officers respond via the transit system to emergency calls for service other than supervisors. And so what that has done is put a tremendously upgraded presence on the system 24 hours a day. So with that itself, we've stopped a lot of the...
My sober off is dementia kicked in.
Disability.
Yeah,
we stopped a lot of the drama on the system. We've restored order in many times. And now we're starting to work with MTA to focus on specific areas where we continue to have disorder. Crime is very low reported on the system. As we expected, we thought we'd see an increase. And I'll give you one example. We had a a vandalism where somebody had shot out at the windshield of a bus with a BB gun. And so as the detectives started to dig into that, we determined that MTA wasn't reporting those crimes. And so
they previously were not reporting
Were not reporting those crimes. They had 8 additional incidents for that one. And so as we started investigating, we ended up serving search warrants, putting out a number of specialized resources in conjunction with Foothill and Valley Bureau. They ended up making a very good arrest, and we filed 9 different counts on the individual, which pushed 9 crimes on that system is significant. And so those are the types of things as we really dig in and are transparent about crime where we're going to see some increases. I suspect after the first year and a half that will all level off and we'll see the real gains that we're starting to make on the system. Tremendous progress in the homeless piece. It is still probably the most significant challenge we'll have on that system. Not only homelessness, but the level of folks that are mentally ill in the system. They use it for shelter, which puts our officers in a really difficult position because as they get called to folks that are acting out on the system, even though it is for a code of conduct violation or a fare evasion violation, the people on that car clearly expect them to take action, or the bus. And so now we're put in the position of removing folks. And so that's a continual struggle to get those numbers down. We're very proud of the level of restraint that we've seen. And we're making good progress moving forward with a new app that will show us where our officers are, all the time on the system. And it'll be a digital log for them, so they won't have to keep paper logs. So overwhelmingly, we're really happy with where we are. All the roll calls are done on the system, and everything that we've done in the system is designed for a high visibility presence. We park decoy cars throughout the system. Each one of our roll calls is done at 4 different locations throughout the city, and each one of those roll calls is at a platform. And so 3 times a day, you'll see officers coming on and going from that platform. And so the sheer presence has benefited us dramatically. As we get further into the system, the coordination with MTA and their security officers and our folks, we're doing sweeps in the morning, for example. In the Union Station, when we started, you'd have over 100 individuals coming in. For the most part, were homeless or transit coming into Union Station. And so now, coordinating with their security, keeping folks off the system that don't have fares, and then sweeping the trains in the morning to get folks out of there has reduced that to, I think this morning, count was 30. And so we're using specialized resources. We've got a hold of MEU, and now we're paying somebody from MEU every day to be in there and do proactive contact with folks that are mentally ill, so we can try and get them off the system before we have an engagement with officers in a response. And so our initial assessment of that, it'll be very, very successful. So I think as we continue to look at budget and the way that we can move things around to enhance our ability to help with the homeless and mentally ill piece, we'll do well. One of the things we underestimated was the volume of paperwork and the paper flow for billing. And so we'll work with MTA now for a budget adjustment for year 2. We'd bring 4 civilian positions in and give up a Lieutenant 2 position. And they've already agreed to fund a full-time HOPE unit, which would be a sergeant and 10 additional officers. And so they see the need, and that's our priority. Our special problems unit that we started with, I've turned that completely into support the HOPE concept, because that is the most significant need, is a homeless piece on that system. So in July, we pick up 27 additional positions, 3 additional special problems unit, and we will have 1 for each bureau, and we'll have a full-time HOPE component. And so I think with that, we'll start to be able to troubleshoot a lot of the quality of life issues that we don't have the personnel to do today. So overwhelmingly, the feedback from MTA has been very, very positive.
Anecdotally, I've heard from a number of people that ride the system that it is night and day. That's something I've heard consistently since we've taken over. And I've also heard from a number of the folks at MTA how pleased they are with how the LAPD has handled, and for them it makes their jobs a lot easier because it makes their ridership a lot happier. So thank you for the great work that we're doing so far.
I just want to chime in as well. I ride the system. My daughter rides the system. We're downtown. We see officers there quite a lot, and I, like Commissioner Johnson, have had a lot of contact with folks at MTA who've been very complimentary of the work that LAPD is doing. I know that you've spent an awful lot of time, but this is a complex effort to get off the ground. We'll be interested in the continual refinement and evaluation, and just want to congratulate you for what you've done so far.
We've got a great team, really good team we've been able to pull together to make it happen. Thank you.
Anything else?
Good work.
Do we have any comments on this item?
We have 2 comment cards. We have Wayne from Encino and Mr. Herman.
Yeah, I have to admit you're doing a good job on this. Yeah, I've seen a market improvement, and I got a tap card, and for only $50, your officers are loaded up with $200 worth of credits. It's a great program. I really support it. So the way you do it is you take a $50 bill, has to be a $50 bill. You got to fold it like this, say, 4 spots, like that. Show the 50. You take your tap card, you put the 50 underneath it like that so you can't see the amount, and then you got to hold it like this. So you walk by and then you hold it like this, cop takes it, you wait, then you get on board, and then you got $200 loaded on the tap card. It's a great thing. It saves me a lot of money. I know a lot of people here know the same thing. You couldn't do it with the damn sheriff's department. They wouldn't take anything. They wouldn't take anything. They wouldn't take a goddamn dollar in bribes, a goddamn sheriff's department. They'd say, you didn't have a ticket when you got on board. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I got a ticket. And the guy's going, no. And they'd cite you these misdemeanor charges for not having a pass on the buses and the trains. And they were, and people had to pay to ride. Outrageous. Nobody should have to pay to ride these trains and these buses on Metro. It should be free or next to free for all. And the LAPD now has restored the faith in the system as it should be. Discounted fares for all Angelenos. So again, this is the way to go. I think 50 is a little high, though, if you could come down maybe to 220s. So in the report, $40, I think, for $200 should be fair, but 50's okay. I've been saving a lot of money. I've been writing it. Good job. Also, if you're a pedophile and you have $100, you can grope the kids. Good job, LAPD.
Mr. Herman?
Yes, public safety on transportation is very important. Matter of fact, I have the so-called orange tap card, the special tap card. However, the way I see things happening now that we have LAPD and the sheriffs conducting the safety of the so-called metro transportation of safety, is that the problem is, you have these so-called hospitals at the trans stations, like the one you have right here off of Pico, that 1238 address I left on my public comment card regarding the medical marijuana stop. Those are the excellent way of transporting drugs. I just love the way you guys conduct the business on behalf of the people. The same way Joe Busciano, the silver-tongued, stupid ex-cop from San Pedro, what does he do? He puts at the Rosa Park station a medical marijuana off of Imperial. And it's the best sight in the world. An eyesore up my ass. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of you putting rank and file at risk of being a potential harm at these stations. I feel harm every time I get on the goddamn train. But no one fucks with you. But once again, there's a reason. Finally, we have more officers actually doing their patrol, foot patrol, something we had years before there was police helicopters and police airplanes and drones. So get off your feet, get off your seat, stick all those donuts in the back seat and start doing your job. That's a good reason why we have safety at the Metro. So the next time you tap, beep, beep, and no one has fare, give them a courtesy to get on for free once. MTA bus drivers do it.
Thank
We
you
have
for
no
your
other
comments.
comment cards, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve the department's report?
Moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you. We're now on item number 4, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So a couple things I wanted to comment on before I talk about general statistics. First, to give you a little closeout on World Police and Fire Games, which were completed middle of last month. We had over 9,000 participants from almost 1,000 different agencies covering 70 countries. They participated in 66 events throughout the region, the LA region, literally all the way from San Bernardino County to Ventura County. We anticipate there will be over $10 million of positive fiscal impact in the city and county of Los Angeles relative to the holding of these events. There were, as I said, almost 1,000 agencies that participated. The number one agency for medals was the Indian National Police. Of course, the country of India has several millions of police officers in that category, and the number 2 agency was the Los Angeles Police Department, which finished just right behind them. Los Angeles Police Department had more participants than the entire state of California. Outstanding. So it was a really good showing by the LAPD. I was very proud of not only how we did, but how we handled the games and the very, very positive feedback that we got. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the summer. We have completed the summer as of Labor Day. So for June, July, and August of 2017, the city suffered 59 homicides. Now, 59 homicides is 59 too many. That is a number that we work, as you well know, very hard to reduce. But I want to put that in context. 59 homicides, you would have to go back to 1966 to find a summer where the city had fewer than 59 homicides. As a matter of fact, the 10-year average is 85. The 20-year average is 113, and the high is well over 300 just for those 3 months. So to achieve 59 homicides over the summer, and not an easy summer nationally, it was a tremendous effort, not only by the Los Angeles Police Department, but by our partners in intervention, because as you know, about 60% of the homicides that we suffer in LA are gang-related. The city's youth programs, the department's youth programs, I think that we saw a summer that will be difficult to replicate. We did have one other summer in the last 50 years where we had the same number of homicides, and that was 2014. But any other summer period doesn't come within 20.
Yeah. So I think it's a remarkable achievement when you look at 2015, the spike we had, followed by an even greater spike in 2016, to reduce the homicide rate to where we are. That is definitely not where we were trending at the beginning of the year, and to be down, I think 17 homicides overall from this time last year shows a lot of the strategies that have been put in place are working, and I applaud the department on that critical work. There's nothing more important we do than save lives, and when we reduce the homicide rate, those are lives saved.
Well, and you know, in a police department that struggles to do everything because we have so much on our plate, you know, we have to prioritize, and reduction of homicides and victims shot are our number one crime priorities. And this year to date, we have a 9% reduction in homicide as compared to last year. As compared to 15, it's a 9.5% reduction. We are right now trending at about a 7% reduction in numbers of victims shot. So these are positive things, and we're coming up on a couple of months that were very tough last year. So I anticipate these numbers to hold. Although, as you well know, there are some very significant variables here. Overall crime, we are up about 1.2% in total Part 1 crime. I'd remind you that we picked up even though Chief Green is right. The crime levels are very low on the MTA. We picked up all of those crimes where we didn't count them last year, as they were counted in the sheriff's side. So we'll when we do our crime report at the end of the year, we'll parse all that out and make sure that it's an apples to apples comparison. Property crime up about 0.4% overall, holding pretty steady at about a 4% increase in motor vehicle theft, being the largest area of increase. That's something that we've seen throughout the state, actually higher throughout the most of the state, but definitely an increase. Rapes are down significantly, which is of course a really good thing, 9.1%. We still struggle with robbery, particularly street robberies, where a bodily force or a blunt instrument is used, and so we're dealing with that. Aggravated assaults are pretty steady at about 4% increase. Public contacts, we're making about the same number of vehicle stops and about the same number of calls for service as we did last year. That is a little reversal of a trend that we had seen. The most remarkable enforcement change has been the amount of guns recovered. We're at 3,876 guns recovered through the end of July, and that's about a 12% increase over last year and about a 20% increase over our 5-year average. And of course, is part of the reason why we're seeing a reduction in shootings and in homicide. Traffic collisions total is about even with a 1% increase. Total number of traffic collisions that result in either a serious injury or a fatality are down just about 5%. Our fatal traffic accidents, and this is as of September 2nd, are down almost 10%. And of course, this is one of the city's major goals is to reduce our fatal traffic accidents. We are still seeing far too many pedestrian-involved traffic accidents. Just to put it in perspective, we've had 88 pedestrians killed in motor vehicle versus pedestrian accidents this year, versus 73 last year. This is not only just a City of Los Angeles trend. This is a national and a statewide trend. But I think it's something that people have to be very aware of and practice pedestrian safety. Even though you have a right of way, you are giving up several thousand pounds to motor vehicles. So you may have the legal right of way, but you don't have the physical right of way. Bicycle involved collisions are down. That's a good thing. It shows an improvement caused by some of the physical changes that we made in our bike lanes. For personnel statistics, we are almost at 10,000 Los Angeles police officers. We're about 25 short. We have 2,859 civilians on payroll, 497 civilian vacancies, about 400 reserve officers, 285 specialist volunteers, and 2,172 cadets in our program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions? Thank you, Chief.
Just a quick observation. I'm interested in, and I don't know that it's something that you can provide now, but I appreciate your making reference to the various partners and strategies that contribute to a reduction in crime citywide. I'd be interested in better understanding the analysis of these numbers in the context of the strategies that we think contributed to their production. I think there's something to learn and understand. I mean, the same way that I wouldn't hold a department responsible for a spike in crime. We know that the department isn't solely responsible for a decrease in crime, but I'm very interested in better understanding how we see the efficacy of various strategies citywide and their implications and impacts on the ability to reduce, in particular, the homicide rate, but also how they impact other aspects of your report. So that's kind of my only feedback, and thank you for the report. It's, of course, incredibly heartening to know that we have fewer deaths this year at this point in time, and such a remarkable decrease in the number of homicides over the summer. So thank you for that.
I think that, of course, these are issues that I'd be willing to talk about any time. But the general time frame that we do these in is at end of year, when we do our final analysis of the year and the total crime picture and the strategies that we attribute increase or reduction to. Also, every year we do an intensive homicide report that talks about victimology and the identities of suspects and the demographics of homicide and the way that we address that. I think those are two good ways to do that. Although I think what I will commit to doing is trying to highlight strategies as I go through my crime report, because I know it's important. I know that sometimes the things we do get lost in the various crises of the day. But having Chief Moore or Chief Grimala come up and talk about some of the things they do. Chief Grimala can talk endlessly about the efficacy of deployment of special services, including Metropolitan Division, and Chief Moore, of course, can talk about how we deploy to crime, how we determine, which crimes we're going to focus on. A lot of places would focus on big number crimes. I mean, big number crimes are petty thefts, and vehicle break-ins and things like that, and we do focus on those. But we are unerringly and unwaveringly focused on reducing homicide and victim shot, and that is the tragedy of Los Angeles, in my opinion. We are far too many young people are most likely to lose their lives or become severely injured because of gunshot, more than any other factor in their life. And so, ways that we can reduce that, I think, is really important, and not only for the victims, but for the neighborhoods. Because having a neighborhood where everybody knows somebody that's been shot is extremely traumatizing, and does not has a tendency to self-perpetuate. So we'd be glad to talk about that anytime.
No, thank you. And the timing in terms of the year end is perfectly fine. I was just. It is just what came to mind as I was listening to the numbers and interested in greater context around them. So thank you.
And in the interest of greater context, thank you to Chief for that. And we know that it's not just about the deployment and other tactics that you described, but it's also all the work the police department does around prevention and youth programs that you alluded to. So always interested in the whole picture whenever you do have the opportunity to share those strategies. Is seeing it's much harder to measure and get credit for all the crimes that are prevented and the young people who are prevented from ever engaging with law enforcement or becoming victims of crime. So the more you can provide that context, the better as well.
And I think it's also very important to talk about context. Because we have a flawed way of looking at crime. When you look at it year to year, sometimes you lose the bigger context. So when I had the CompStat unit pull the numbers for Summers, for all the way back to the 60s. Actually, all the way back to before I was born, 52. Not much before I was born, but a little bit before I was born. All the way back to 52. When you look at, and murder is something that. Murder is a constant in that it's always defined the same way. It doesn't shift. There's no changes in the UCR. There's no, it's much easier to compare apples to apples. And when you look at the dramatic difference in the city over years past, it's really stunning. You know, and that's why I think the homicide report is so important and why we put so much effort in it every year, is because it tells a long-term story about crime in Los Angeles. You know, there were summers when we had 5 times as many homicides as we just did in this last summer. And that's with a population of 1 million less than today. And even just in the last 10 years, we've been able to, the number of homicides represented over this summer is half of many of those years, half. So, you know, it's not just, this is, the Los Angeles Police Department gets the credit and the blame, sometimes undeservedly on both sides, for crime. It's the city's crime. Homicide is a crime of the city. You know, it is much deeper than just how many cops I put on, you know, the corner of Broadway and wherever. You know, it's how do young people resolve disputes? You know, what are their options? You know, what are their options in life? You know, how do we handle domestic violence? You know, are we able to stop these things before they start? So, you know, it is much more than just telling you whether your police department's doing a good job. I think it talks about the city and how the city has changed. And I think that's really important. And I think that sometimes it gets lost in, you know, we had a crime spike over 1 month, you know, and believe me, I deal with that. And I wake up in the middle of the night thinking how to deal with that stuff. That's what I do. That's who I am. But I think that it's important to look at it in the context of history.
Also think, Chief, that for us to give a shout out to the service providers that are taking care of people and helping keep these rates down by what they do is a really important thing.
Well, I mean, you got to put this in the context of it. We just were able to, because of the mayor, able to expand the DART programs to every division. So, you know, DART programs have they don't have it's not like putting a cop on the corner. It doesn't have an immediate impact, but it has a long-term and very intelligent impact on violent crime, not only to an immediate victim, but in the context of kids and what violence kids are exposed to and what their future is going to be and what violent violence they're going to be involved in. You know, the ability to keep guns out of young people's hands through enforcement so that immediate retribution doesn't occur over minor disputes. You know, this is really important. This is what Chicago struggles with. You know, Chicago struggles with, you know, a slight, you know, between primarily young males results in an immediate response of deadly violence. You know, where in a city where they're less likely to carry all the time, that doesn't happen. Anyway, it's just very complicated.
And that when I indicated that I was interested in a broader context, it's precisely that, so that we can, I think it is important that we recognize and acknowledge, and I know that you do, that this is not the sole province of this department, that there are so many factors, and in fact, you've already listed a few of the strategies that are that have been and are deployed in order to support the work of limiting the amount of violence we have on our street. And I'm extremely interested in, in looking at that picture in a more nuanced way and in a way that underscores the importance of those kinds of efforts to make the efforts on behalf of this department more effective. Yeah. So
that's why we concentrate on health. You know, that's why we do the community safety partnership, and they're concentrating on making a community healthy in all the different ways that it takes to be healthy. Getting to school, getting to work, having work. You know, having young people involved in positive programs, all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, you know, that's not the sole job of the department, but it is. But the recognition of it is important to the department, so the department understands, you know, and when I say department, I don't mean me, I mean everybody, down to the newest recruit, understands that we're in this with everybody, and that we rise or fall in our success based on how well all the other pieces of society succeed. So, it's just it's an important discussion to have, and I'm glad we had a great summer. I'm very, very proud of the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department and the effort they put into it, because, you know, I know they tried in every way possible to make sure that we didn't replicate one of our more recent summers where we had some difficulties.
Thank you.
We have 4 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, followed by Prentice Jenkins, Paula Miner, and Wayne from Encino.
Well, this is directed to Mr. Rogan. CF number 16001652 in relation to 00136. Per the investigation of your complaint that was reported June 15th regarding the conduct of employees of the Los Angeles Police Department has been completed. The investigation has gone through several levels of review, including myself and the command of Staff Internal Affairs Group, that your allegation of employees racially profiled you has been classified as a duplicate. No fucking shit. It is a duplicate. A duplicate because the last time I attended one of these meetings, that Sergeant LeFew out there got up in my face, put his body against mine, and I simply said, "Get the fuck off my body." That's all I said. Get the fuck off my body. Don't touch me. Don't threaten me in my house, in what I pay for, protection and safety. If anyone here has a mental health issue, it's something that Miss Shane over there can talk about. She knows for a fact what her brother's life was like having mental health. She could tell Mr. Sobroff who suffers from schizophrenic or bipolar issues. Right, Mr. Sobroff? When you can't even pay for your goddamn dog license. Woof, woof. That's what City Watch pointed out about you. And then going back, Mr. Rogan, once again, follow through with your investigations. Follow through. Otherwise, I'm wasting my fucking time with a paper trail. It's a paper trail. That's what I'm creating, so that I know that those who decide to 42 U.S.C. 1983 fucking kill me, it's my local government who can't stand my fucking ass of attending fucked up meetings like this because dumbass developers who are billionaires can't afford to pay for their dog license. Roof, roof. So get your shit together, asshole.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. Good morning, President Johnson.
Good morning.
Vice President Soboroff, Commission. I received a real insult this morning. I said hello to you, Chief Charlie Beck. And the chief said, yeah. Wow. A supporter. Yeah. Oh. Thank you. Huh? Oh, okay. That's funny. Okay. And you said he didn't see me as a child. My big brother used to call me Spook L. I used to be dark as this right here. So it's possible you didn't see me. I actually did used to be as dark. I lightened up some when I was 16. I used to be this color. So, okay, I'll take your apology, Chief. Every now and then, I'm your supporter. Come over and shake my hand and say hello. And also, regarding traffic issues, I took this morning coming here. This is on 6th, and this is on 3rd and Main. I'm waiting on a red light. Watch this traffic. As I'm walking across the street, they block the intersection. They block the pedestrian way. Now I got to weave and dodge out of all these cars. Somebody's going to be killed. This is why you need your officers down there giving out tickets, because as a pedestrian, I want to know that I'm safe walking across the street. They block the actual intersection, Chief. What are you going to do about that? They do that all the time on 3rd and Main. They do it on 7th and Broadway. They do it on 7th and Bixel. They do it on 7th and Hope. They block the intersection so we can't get past.
Paula Miner.
Hi, Chief Beck. Can you see me? I just have some comments. In recent weeks, when you were asked by the media what you thought of the issues and concerns that were raised by Black Lives Matter and other groups, your response was, oh, those are merely professional protesters raising their concerns of the day. Both you and the head of the police union called us professional protesters. So I thought it was important for me to remind you, to be clear, that we are not professional protesters. We're not paid to speak out against the deception and manipulation that occurs with LAPD. The most recent example has to do with the drone hearings, 4 of them held in no hearings held in South Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, or Central Los Angeles. We speak out against that kind of lies and deceits that permeate a lot of the things that we see. You're the professional. You get paid, and you decide what you allow to continue and promote. We feel like the culture of lying and deceit goes on and on. We are community members. We come here to speak out. We do what they call trying to speak truth to power. We do it for free. We are not paid professionals. We do it because we believe we must speak out, and because this is the forum where people are supposed to come and speak out, and we'll continue to speak out. Also, Black Lives Matter is not a hate group. We do not believe in violence or hate. We were created to stand against state-sanctioned brutality and murder. In addition to the physical brutality, there's also the psychological and emotional brutality. And when we come and speak on the policies, procedures, and actions that occur here, we are also speaking against that psychological and emotional brutality.
Thank you. Wayne Formancino.
More when you lie. More trauma for the victims when you lie to people. The LA Times.
Yes, speaking of crime, so I had a court order I had to comply with last year. May the 20th, I had to turn in all my guns. I had 24 hours because you sent 2 detectives over to my house. Why'd that happen? Because your detective who heads a threat management unit took a narrative, a perjured narrative from your council president, and falsely arrested me. As a result of seizing my guns, you filed false gun charges this year, resulting in an infraction. So then you took the records. You got a guy in the State Bar's chief enforcement, Kevin B. Taylor, at the State Bar to initiate a disbarment proceeding against me for being convicted of 2 misdemeanor crimes of moral turpitude. And that was filed at the end of August 31st, and it was served on me last week. Why do I get a letter today that this State Bar requests that the State Bar dismiss or vacate the August 31st, 2017 charges in this matter? They were resolved as infractions, not misdemeanors. So you see the power of you guys. Now you have people at the State Bar now working to fuck with my life. My license. See, this guy Kevin B. Taylor that's in the State Bar falsified the report to the State Bar Court and filed it recklessly and knowingly, fraudulently against me. It's in City Watch today in an article. So after I turned it over, a mere 6 hours later to the media, they ran and filed to dismiss it. So you know where my case is. It's time to pay off, you bunch of fucking pieces of shit.
We have no other comment cards on item number 4. We're now on item number 5, public comment. We have 8 cards. The first 3 cards, Robert Colburn, followed by Mr. Herman and Etta Hendra.
Yes, automatic license plate readers used by the LAPD and LASD scan 3 million plates a week. They have a database with 500 million records. The vast majority of the vehicle owners whose plates are scanned have violated no law. But the stockpile of data can be used to piece together a person's travel patterns, like where they go, when, how often, etc. The ACLU EFF sued in order to get a week's worth of data from the plate readers, and they want the data in a form that protects the identities of individuals. The police argued they couldn't release the data because they were criminal investigative records. This argument implies that everyone in the city and county is constantly under criminal investigation. The California Supreme Court just ruled against the police, a win for transparency. The ruling sets a precedent that mass indiscriminate data collection by the police can't be withheld on the grounds that it's investigative records. This case shows we are in keeping new technologies controlled by laws guaranteeing constitutional rights. In order to get a little bit of transparency, it took several years and an appeal to the state Supreme Court. It's a heavy price to pay for oversight. This shouldn't be the case. The LAPD should not use new technology, including drones, automatic tattoo recognition, until somebody figures out how to do it so that they're constrained, it's all transparent and they're not violating the Bill of Rights.
Thank you for your comments.
So, in regards to Kevin B. Taylor, number 151715, State Bar Court Review Department, for the record, under case number 17C01848, on the matter of Wayne Spindler versus a request to withdraw transmittal and conviction, bus and proof code 6102C. Now, you see, this is all a part of the LAPD's TRO and the TMU. The same system you use against many people here today needs to stop. Stop using investigating detectives to harass, retaliate against the public for their civil liberties and their rights under the Bill of Rights and California Constitution. 42 U.S.C. 1983, Michael Hunt arrested more than 83 times the Red Chief. Choo-choo! And then Wayne Spindler's life threatened by the Highway Patrol at a public evening meeting in Van Nuys because of Mr. Brad Sherman, the congressman, is an asshole. So I know what it's like to feel in this position the same way I felt the last time in the position. You know why I felt that way? I felt that way just because Kevin Dilley owns Assembly Bill 1618. No place like home. Well, I don't need to wear a mask to cover what no place like home is like, because Carol Bowles Goodson, the honorable judge, used the TOR system as a way of retaliation, harassment, and to remove Spindler and Michael Hunt from public meetings. Stop fucking with people. Ninth Circuit.
Thank you. Edra Hindra, followed by Prentice Jenkins.
I'm Etta Hindra. I'm request help because my car was impounded. Because my car was impounded by Santa Monica College Police and my house was foreclosed. So I was already on the street for 10 months. My car, I need my car.
Your car was impounded by the Santa Monica Police?
Yes.
Sorry, but we have no involvement with the Santa Monica Police Department at all.
And I also was accused. I entered my house, but I never entered my house.
Thank you.
The next speaker, please, Prentice Jenkins, followed by Victoria Stockton and Wayne from Encino.
Prentice Jenkins, founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. I'm the canary in the mine. I'll remind us that one of the biggest racists in the country took over the White House. He's in the White House now. He's accused in 1994 of raping a 13-year-old girl. That is the girl he raped. She's 35 now. That's what she looks like. She was 13. She says he beat her, raped her. She was a virgin. He said she bled all over the place. He threatened her. You ever tell anybody, I'll kill you and your family. He can actually do it now. That man can actually do it. Send people after her now. The second thing he did was he was coming down an elevator. The man in the White House. I never call him president. I call him resident. He was coming down the elevator. He saw a 10-year-old girl and said, I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Now, how many of you have 10-year-old girls? If a man walked by, saw your daughter, and said, I'm going to be dating her in 10 years, what would you consider that man to be? A pedophile. Anytime you say that to a 10-year-old girl, and I heard the video. You know what the little girl, most people didn't hear it. After he said it, the little girl said, ew. Most people didn't hear that. I heard it. I listened for it. 10-year-old girl. He got a hard-on for a 10-year-old girl. That's the most disgusting thing you've ever heard. Then, in 93, he beat the hell out of his wife, Ivana Trump, because she recommended a hair replacement guy, messed up his head. Went home, beat the hell out of her, raped her, and there is a police report on it. And he said, I'll pay you off. If you don't take the money, I'll just knock you off.
My name is Victoria. There was an officer-involved shooting in my home on August 4th in which Todd Gregory Herbert was shot dead by PD. He was sitting in his chair. The shot went through his arm into his chest. Mr. Beck, too bad he had to leave, made a statement to the LA Times on August 10th that completely gave an embellished story, a wrong story. He lied about the origination of the original call, what happened while the police were there. I was a witness. I was there. The gun fired in my ear. The officer had to fire past me and another officer in order to shoot Todd, who was still sitting in his chair. I had filed a complaint against Charlie Beck. I've not received an acknowledgement on it yet. I referenced Barry Montgomery as a witness. Barry Montgomery had given a statement the night of the incident, where he correctly stated the origination of the call. The statement that Beck gave to the LA Times is completely wrong. There seems to be a pattern of Beck lying, covering up crimes. Civilians are being murdered. He was brought in to clean up Rampart. All he is doing is lying and covering for it. And you all are sitting here and you're watching it. How do I file a complaint against the chief of police? How do I begin an investigation?
Mr.
The
Rogan,
forced investigation
can you have
unit
someone
is
from
still
your office follow up with her, please?
Is still
we'll have someone
working
from
on
the
this.
Inspector General's office follow up with you right now.
Can I give this to someone? Because apparently Beck has sole authority to put this in the trash, and does. There were 2 other complaints that I filed. I'd be happy to give you those as well. Those I've received acknowledgments on, but the one against Beck I have not. And like I said, too bad he left, because I would have liked to have him explain why he said what he said to the LA Times. It was completely a lie. When I asked detectives about it, they said, oh, you know Charlie Beck, he's so far up there, he doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. Well, fix the public statement that he's made then to LA Times, because the story he gave was wrong.
We'll have someone from the IG's office follow up with you.
I started filing complaints 3 weeks ago.
The next speaker, Wayne from Encino, followed by Tiffany Guerra, Paula Miner, and Hamid Khan.
So we're still waiting on when Commissioner Sobroff's going to pay us dog fees. $15,000 worth of back dog fees, we hear it could be as high as. So anytime you see Steve just give them a shout out, make a little, put your hands like this and go, "Ruff, ruff." Everybody, every time you see him. Because you see, he's allowed to be a commissioner violating law, which is against the city charter, violates the Brown Act as well. He violated his ethics forms. He was required to disclose that as a conflict of interest, that he owes the city a substantial amount of liability for numerous animals, that he's never paid a goddamn dime in dog licenses, according to media reports. Then somebody offered something. Why doesn't he give a check for $15,000, $20,000 to the Humane Society as a gesture to settle the potential dispute? No answer. So then we got Matt Johnson. Back when Donald Trump's sign was abused, getting out of one of his $400 free dinners, and he says that it was wonderful on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that Donald Trump's sign was, his star was destroyed. At city expense, police overtime, Matt Johnson says it's wonderful when you go and destroy public property and have to cause multiple officer overtime. He thinks that's wonderful, and he's still sitting on the commission. Then we got Shane over there, won't get her family member off the streets, letting the county and city pay for the wayward relative. Buy the guy a fucking house. All of you resign.
Tiffany Guerra.
So, because the LAPD is such a consistent source of misinformation when it comes to drones, right now we're going to review the top 10 lies and misleading statements by the LAPD regarding drones and the intended pilot program. And these are statements made at the 4 community presentations and here in this room in the presentation. So number 1, it's just a small drone. This was made at the presentation in Van Nuys on August 23rd. Weapons of surveillance do not have to be large to have an impact, and far smaller drones are being engineered to provide surveillance that is nearly undetectable. The physical size of a drone is of little consequence. What's important is its instant capacity to cause harm. The second lie or misleading statement: it is only to be used in very limited circumstance with command officer approval. That was made in the presentation in Atwater Village. Even with the claim today to use drones only in limited circumstances, mission creep under the guise of operational needs sets in over time, expanding the scope much beyond the original intent. Examples include SWAT teams, helicopters, suspicious activity reporting. When introduced in 1967, SWAT was intended for crowd control and civil unrest, but the mission quickly expanded. When the LAPD got its first helicopter in 1956, it was for traffic control. Now helicopters patrol daily over crime hotspots based on machine-based predictions. The SAR program was originally intended for counterterrorism, and now it is now LAPD's insidious tool for everyday policing, resulting in rampant racial profiling and the opening of thousands of secret files. In each case, LAPD actions were approved by a commanding officer. CO approval fails to serve as a check to limit how equipment is used to target, harm, and oppress. Lie number 3, there is no intention to arm them ever. That is not going to happen. I can assure you of that. That statement was made in San Pedro. History has shown that the community cannot rely on the assurances and stated intentions of the LAPD. Number 4, this would be a terrible device for spying. You can see it pretty clearly. This was made in the presentation at San Pedro, yet in the same meeting this was said. LAPD described how drones would be used for surveillance of folks who might not be aware of it.
Basically, what we're doing is reporting back from those 4 drone hearings. And these are things that were said, and these are the responses. Number 5 is nothing more than getting the ability to see around corners or in places where it could be dangerous for us. This was made in San Pedro on August 23rd, 2017. Our responses is more than that. Introducing a drone to a situation where there wasn't one previously is an escalation of tactics and will negatively impact the person being targeted as well as the surrounding community. In public meetings at the LA Police Commission, the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission, and in public surveys such as the local blog for the Leimert Park residents, members of communities that are already over-policed have described their anxiety, worry, and frustration at the sound and sight of police vehicles already in the sky in the form of helicopters. Number 6, we're talking about saving lives. This is what was mentioned in the Van Nuys August 23rd meeting. It's common for LAPD to cite preservation of life as the reason behind its tactics, but for communities that are increasingly criminalized, what the LAPD calls preservation of life can really look like occupation and oppression. Excessive use of force is used routinely by LAPD officers all under the guise of preservation of life. 14-year-old Jesse Romero was shot in the back because an officer feared for his life. So was 18-year-old Carnell Snell. Number 7, drones will not be used over a First Amendment protected demonstration or march. And this was said at Atwater Village, August 23rd. The key phrase here is First Amendment protected, also known as free speech rights. There are several reasons why a demonstration, protest, or a public meeting would not be constitutionally protected, according to the ACLU.
Hamid Khan.
Number 8 lie, this was also at Atwater Village. Drones are already being used by 330-something agencies nationwide. Well, according to publicly accessible records, and not including drones used by federal agencies, as of April 2017, the number of law enforcement agencies, fire and emergency responder agencies using drones across the U.S. was 347. And while the LAPD wants us to believe that the use of drones by police departments is a common occurrence, less than 2.13% of law enforcement agencies in California are in possession of drones, based on statistics from California Commission of Peace Officer Standards and Training and the Center for Study of Drones. In May 2017, the state of Connecticut attempted to become the first state to weaponize drones. North Dakota has already armed drones with less lethal weapons such as tear gas and rubber bullets. So while the LAPD's intent might not be used to arm drones immediately, the precedent has been set, just as the precedent has been set with other agencies using drones. Number 9, any changes in policy would have to be approved by the LA Police Commission, and the public would have to have a chance to provide feedback in the form of a 2-minute comment. This was said at Atwater Village as well. But we see what happens over here, because a 2-minute comment is the only right that we have, and then when we speak truth to power, we get arrested. And the last lie, we wanted to be sure that if we were to dip our toe in this water, it would be with input and respect for the community. This was said at Atwater Village. The LAPD has shown no respect to the community since the process began. On August 8th, when the LAPD made their initial presentation to the Police Commission, members of the public gathered before the meeting to hold a press conference voicing their concerns, which were raised again during the meeting by different community members in public comment. None of this was acknowledged by the Commission, who indicated they intended to go forward with the program even before hearing what we learned through planned outreach. When the LAPD's public meetings regarding drones were finally announced, it was 1 day prior to the meetings. All 4 meetings were scheduled on the same day and time, and none were located in neighborhoods most impacted by police occupation and violence. The Stop LAPD Spying Coalition was not notified, nor were other community groups that the LAPD knew were deeply committed to the issue. After being challenged by their lack of community outreach, the LAPD put out a statement lying about the consensus from the meetings. Shane Goldsmith, you were present at the Westwood meeting, and you were a witness to what the community said. Every step in the process has been marked with lack of respect and underhandedness that the community has come to expect, yet the LAPD wants us to believe they will be transparent and forthcoming with regard to their use of drones. People have completely and outrightly rejected the use of drones by the LAPD, and no drones for LAPD at all.
Thank you. There are no other comments on public comment. We're now on item number 6. There are no items. Is there a motion to adjourn, Mr. President?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Hi, I'm Cindy, and I'm in Little Tokyo, and you're watching Channel 35, Your City, Your Channel.